If you're trying to figure out what volume developer you should use with your hair color, you've come to the right place. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Laura, I'm a hairstylist, and in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 steps to take when determining what volume developer you should use with your hair color. I'm also gonna go over several other factors that you need to consider that may change the formula or the volume that you're using. Okay, so first I wanna talk a little bit about what developer is and how it works before determining what volume you should use. If you already know how developer works, you can go to the timestamps and skip ahead. So developer is a hydrogen peroxide mixture. It usually comes in a cream base, but you can also get it in a completely liquid formula as well. Both work just the same, but the cream formulas tend to be a little bit easier to paint with on the hair. The liquid formulas are a little bit more runny, and this is why you don't see them used as often. So developer is what activates the color molecules in hair color. Without it, hair color will not actually do anything to the hair. And this developer comes in multiple different strengths. And with hair color, the strength of the developer is what determines the amount of lift you're gonna get. When used with bleach, it determines the speed at which the hair lifts to. The higher the strength used, the wider the hair opens up and the deeper the color is able to penetrate the hair. So developer strength is measured in volumes, and this is what determines how much peroxide is in the developer. The most common permanent color developer options are 10, 20, 30, and 40 volume. Now, we use 5 and 6 volume for demi-permanent hair color, and I've seen developers all the way up to 50 and even 100 volume, though I would not recommend using those. Now, the ratio of developer to hair color that you should use is dependent on the line that you're using. I highly recommend always using what the manufacturer recommends. Most hairlines recommend 1:1, 1:1.5, or 1:2 color to developer ratio. So for example, if the color line recommends 1:2, you would use 30 grams of color to 60 grams developer. This goes across the board whether you're measuring in grams or ounces or however else you're gonna measure it. Now, you don't always need to use the same brand developer as hair color. A lot of lines will recommend that you use their developer with their color for best results, and you can definitely go ahead and do that. But for me, I found that it did not make any difference. I got the same results when I used generic developer as well as the more expensive developer that comes with the brand. In the description below, I've linked some developer options from 5 volume all the way up to 40 volume that you can get on Amazon. Okay, now let's get into the 3 steps to take to determine what volume developer you should use with hair color. Okay, so the first step is to determine your starting hair color level. Now, if you don't know what hair color levels are, watch this video linked above, and I give a much deeper description. But the level of hair color is referring to the lightness and darkness of the color. So a level 1 is black, and a level 10 is the lightest blonde, like my ends here. Now, keep in mind that this has nothing to do with the shade or the tone of the hair color. We're only talking about levels here. And if the hair that you're working with has multiple different colors with multiple different levels on it, keep in mind that this is a corrective color service. You will need to consider each of these different levels separately. Each separate color will need a different formula in order to ensure even results. Okay, step 2 is to determine your desired level. Now, the easiest way to do this is to look at a swatch book and pick the color that you want. Now that we know our starting level as well as our desired level, it's time to move on to step 3, and that is to determine how many levels of lift or deposit we need to achieve. So if our starting level is a 6 and our desired level is an 8, that means we need to lift 2 levels. And if our starting level is an 8 and we want to move down to a 6, then we need to deposit 2 levels. Now I'll explain the different developer volumes and how many levels of lift they'll allow you to get. Okay, so for 5 or 6 volume developer, this is typically a demi-permanent deposit. This means the color will deposit only and it will not provide any lift. And since it's such a low peroxide developer, it should not alter the hair permanently. This is what makes it a demi-permanent deposit. I would choose 5 or 6 volume if I did not want to permanently alter the natural hair color. I use these a lot for root smudges as well as color refreshes on the ends. Now you'll choose 10 volume if you want to deposit only. 10 volume does not lift the hair at all, but it will alter the hair permanently. 10 volume is best when you do want to alter the hair permanently, but you're looking to deposit or go darker only, not go any lighter. Now, 20 volume will give you one level of lift. And this is best for stubborn gray coverage because it has a little bit more peroxide to penetrate the hair a little bit deeper. 30 volume will give you 2 levels of lift. And 30 volume is better if you're looking for a color that you want to be a little bit brighter. I often would choose this for reds or violets or anything that's a bit brighter of a color. Okay, and 40 volume is going to give you 3 levels of lift when used with traditional hair color. Now, this is when you just want to use traditional color, but you want to get your maximum level of lift. But keep in mind that it's only going to give you 3 levels of lift. Okay, now that we've figured this out and you know how many levels you need and you have a good idea of what developer you're going to use, I want to talk about some other factors that you need to consider that may change the developer volume that you use. The first one is determining if the hair is virgin or color treated. It's very important to know that hair color will not lighten through previously colored hair. It will only lighten virgin hair. So if the hair has previous color on it and you need to lighten it, you're gonna need to use bleach. Okay, the next one is, are you coloring just the roots or are you coloring the hair from scalp to ends? Now, since the roots of the hair are closest to the scalp, this hair will process one level lighter than the hair on the mids and the ends. This is because of the heat coming off from the scalp will speed up the processing and make it process a little bit lighter. So this means if you're coloring the hair from roots to ends, you might need to use a lower volume developer at the roots than you do on the mids and the ends of the hair. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with what us hairstylists call hot roots. This is where the roots of the hair have processed lighter and brighter because of the heat from the scalp. Okay, next is if you need to lift more than 3 levels. Now, if you need to lighten the hair more than 3 levels, then I would recommend not using traditional hair color. And depending on what your goals are here and what color line you're using, you have a couple of different options. Your first option is to use bleach. What you would do is use bleach to lift the hair your correct amount of levels and then go back and tone the hair to your desired level. Your second option is to use high lift hair color. Now, high lift hair color is similar to traditional hair color because it's not bleach, but it contains extra ammonia and it will give you 4 to 5 levels of lift depending on the brand. Now, this is what I use on my hair to get my hair from a natural level 6 to a level 10, like my ends. But it's also important to note that this can be used on brunettes as well, as long as your goal isn't to get to a level 10. If you want to lift 4 or 5 levels and you are a brunette, you still can use a high lift color. Just know that the swatch isn't going to necessarily look like what your hair looks like. Okay, the third option is to use a power brown. Now, not all lines contain power browns. In fact, most of them do not. But this is similar to a high lift color because it does contain extra ammonia, but these are actually designed for brunette tones. This is similar to using a high lift on brunettes, only you have a little bit more control and you know what your results are going to be a little bit better. Okay, next you need to consider the underlining pigment in the hair. Now, this video is really only designed to help you choose what developer you should use, but it's important to note that you need to consider the underlining pigment in your target level shade. Now, the underlining pigment is the warm color that is exposed when hair is lightened. This is why hair turns yellow and orange when it's bleached, because you're removing the outer color and you're exposing the underlining color. I'm going to quickly put up a chart here that shows what the underlining pigment is for each hair color level. On the right, you can see the corrective base that you would need to use to cancel out this underlining pigment if it's not desired. Now, something else you need to consider is the hair texture. If you have extremely coarse hair, you may need to use a higher volume developer than if you have extremely fine hair. This is because the diameter of coarse hair is quite a bit thicker than of somebody that has fine hair, and it actually contains a third layer that fine hair doesn't normally contain. Because of this, you may need to use a higher volume developer to penetrate deeply into this hair strand. Now, keep in mind that this has nothing to do with the density of your hair, meaning the thickness or how many hairs you have per square inch. This is simply referring to the diameter or the thickness of each individual hair strand. Okay, the last consideration is, are you covering gray? So gray hair is often more resistant to hair color than other natural hair colors are. Since the natural melanin has left the hair, it can be a little bit more difficult to get the color molecules to stick because there's nothing present for them to stick to. Most color lines recommend using 20 volume for gray coverage, but others recommend 10. I recommend checking the color line that you're using and seeing what they recommend to use for gray coverage. And some lines even carry an entire line that has extra pigment built into it for optimal gray coverage. Another thing to consider when covering gray is that your shade may need to be adjusted. If you're using a color that has red in it, you're gonna need to add a neutral or a gold color to your formula so that the gray hairs don't take on a bright pink color. Now, if you're wondering what developer volume to use with bleach, check out this video here. I ran an experiment where I tested the different strengths of developer with bleach, and you will likely be very surprised by the results. All right, guys, that is gonna be it for this video. Leave me any other questions you have on developer volumes in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe if you wanna make every day a good hair day. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.